We're going to now pass it over to Dr. Tawana, who's organizing this.
Good evening, everyone.
Why are you doing the overlay?
For those of you who don't know me, and for those who do but may have forgotten, I'm Dr. Tawana Guilford, born and raised in Harlem. This is my home. Thank you all. I am overwhelmed with emotion because I have formed relationships and connections in this community with many of you in this room centered around this very topic of community policing, police accountability, and public safety. Based on what we see in this room here, it's apparent that we have an issue. It is very apparent that public safety is a priority in this community, but also, how do we improve our police relations? How do we protect ourselves from bad policing? And this is not a call or forum to indict any officers, but we have to move from a place where it's either or, and we have to get to a place where both conversations can be had. We have to be able to embrace both parts of the conversation because they're both very true for us. We have historically been impacted by policing, right? All of us in this room, historically impacted by policing. We have to feel safe in our communities, and that's safe from the elements that we see on the news, but it's also safe from the historical legacy of mistreatment by the police. So we want you all to feel safe in this room, to know that we are here to discuss the problems, which we have been talking about for years. And this is why we've invited our elected officials into the room, into this space, because we have been speaking in silos. We have been speaking together in small groups, but it's time to bring the conversations to the front, to the people who matter. We are very fortunate that in this moment we have a state legislator, a city legislator, we have on the way, we have our city public advocate, and then we also have some people in the community that have been on the ground doing the work. Because we know, right? We know that those who have been affected by the problem needs to be a part of the conversation. We can no longer have conversations happening about policing and public safety without us present. So today is the day that Harlem has been waiting for us to have the opportunity to have our elected officials at the table with us, right? Because it has always been us, right? We have been doing the work. We have been bearing the brunt, wearing the bruises, covering our wounds, bleeding out. But now they're here with us. Now we become one, right? Like Senator Clear, one Harlem, one Harlem, one Harlem. So tonight is the embodiment of that. So I just ask that we promote love in the room, because everyone has feelings, right? Each of us has feelings. And we come into this room wearing our experiences, right? We take pride in our experiences, good, bad, or indifferent. But we want to make sure that this is a safe space, because this is the first of many conversations. Tonight is the kickoff, but we will be having many of these town hall forums until we get legislation passed that reflect our experiences and that make us feel whole. So I'd like to acknowledge our elected officials that are in the room. We have many. We have, and I'm not going to call anyone out by name because there are so many, but we have individuals from the Attorney General's office, from the Manhattan DA's office, from the Assembly, from the Senate. So we have, and I'm not going to call anyone out because we don't want anyone to be ambushed, but we have people listening. So I understand that many of you may feel disappointed that you won't get the mic, but we all know that sometimes when people aren't a part of the panel, they stand in the aisles and they form a panel of their own. So we want to make sure that we have enough time to get to everyone's questions. If not everyone's questions, most of the questions. And if you have written a question, most likely we've answered it, right? So mindful that your question may not get asked because we've answered it. Will also be available after the panel, but there will be duplications of questions. So we're going to make sure that we try to cover all bases with that. So without further ado, because I can go on and on and on, and I'm also a panelist, so you'll be hearing from me again. I'd like to turn the floor over to our council member, Yusuf Salam. Yusuf Salam, before he became our council member, he has been a hero to many, right? Many in our community who have been under the foot of the injustice system. His mom has been a very, very, very supportive person in my life because when I was experiencing my brother's wrongful conviction, for 6.5 years he was wrongfully convicted, I reached out to his mom. And his mom showed me how to forge ahead in spite of the pain that I was feeling from the justice system, that I needed to turn my pain into purpose. And I looked at his mom's life because she was a magnificent woman who wore her head up high. In spite of the legacy of her son, she still encouraged and inspired people like me to represent my family members, and that one day we will get justice. So she is a woman of many resources, and she has done a great job shaping the young man that we have in front of us today. And without further ado, our council member, Yusuf Salam.
Trying to get over this. The papers are serving.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Because we are an interfaith community, I want to translate that in the best way that I know how. May the peace, mercy, and blessings from the owner of all peace, mercy, and blessings be upon each and every one of you. I wanna start perhaps with a story. You know, right now, there's a lot of unrest going on. The streets are overflowing, and particularly our universities that are supposed to be building up the future generation, preparing them to take over all avenues of society, are crying out. So I want to tell you a story of when I was at USC in California. And I'm there and we're about to show a film. The film was the Central Park 5 documentary. There were some technical difficulties, and so we would have some issues. They had a big projector, but it was not connecting right. And so the room was much like this. It's just that it was probably 3 to 5 times the size of this room. It was standing room only. And in the room were members of the community, faculty, students, and we were all conversing amongst ourselves. And then we started a discussion, and one of the young girls stood up. This young girl, she said, Yusuf Salam, I have a question. She said, I'm 13 years old. I'm a cadet. I want to become a cop. What advice can you give? I think somebody said an explicative that I heard. It was very low, but that's what happened in my mind. I was like, whoa. You know, we've been taught to think 5 times before we speak. Taste the words, consider the words, figure out where the words will lead, and then come back to the present to deliver what it is that you found in the spirit of Sankofa. Sankofa goes back. There's also sacred time that allows you to move into the future. And I was looking at this young girl, and had I just said what it was that I thought was on my mind at that particular point in time, I would have led her down the wrong track. But I started talking to her, and I said, you know, I've been traveling the country. At that point, I hadn't yet gone international and been anywhere international. But I said, I've been traveling the country, and one thing I've seen, which blew my mind, was the fact that on the side of every single police car that is marked are the words to protect and serve. Everywhere I've gone throughout this nation. And I said to her that in New York, they've gone a step above and beyond. And check this out, they added the words courtesy, professionalism, and respect. I don't know if Eric Gardner had been murdered yet. But consider the fact that on the side of the cop cars, they didn't give Eric Gardner CPR. He was saying, I can't breathe. It became a mantra. It became a mantra of the nation. They took it. They lived it. They experienced it because they saw it. What we are experiencing is affecting our very lives. No longer is it okay for our public servants to say, I was just doing my job. There will be a day that they will be wishing that they could go back. And I'm saying, as I thought about this, and I told this young lady all of this, I said, I didn't talk about where policing was. I didn't talk about that when we read the Constitution of these United States and we start with the words, we the people. And you just pause and just take the temperature of the room. And most young people, when you ask them, who do you believe they are talking about? And they will most certainly guarantee and say to you, they're talking about me. But when that document was being created and ratified, Black people in particular, and brown people in general, were considered 3/5 of a human being. They have never gone back to reform that. And so as I spoke to this young girl, I gave her some of my best. I don't know if it was taped, but when I spoke to her, I was trying to speak life into the future of what policing could be. And when I heard the mayor, when I started listening and I started really paying attention in the political space, I heard the mayor call the graduates of society. I took exception. I said, I wonder what that young girl is doing today. I wonder if she became a police officer and used what I told her. If she did, she is going to be one of the police that we want to protect and serve us. Because I know that there's many. I have cops and officers in my family. I have friends that are officers. I've never heard them be talked about. But the ones we do hear about are the bad actors. There has to be a change in the very service that the people who are to protect and serve us are offering so that it makes sense. And I'm talking to you like this because, yes, I'm a city councilman. But yesterday, I was not only close to the pain, I was in pain. Yesterday, when I was marching for justice in 2002, when they found out that we didn't do it, and many of you joined me. Many of you joined us as we marched up and down Malcolm X Boulevard. I started saying to myself, who's in the halls of power that's hearing us? I started saying to myself, does it matter that every single day I came home and I looked in the mirror, I didn't realize that I was looking at me. I needed to be in the halls of power. I had been close to the pain, therefore, I should have a seat at the table. Yep. And so, as I close, I just want to acknowledge all of the pain and all of the suffering but I also want to live in the future tense of what could be. And we got to bring that about. We have to participate at a very, very high level to break the origins of where we are still experiencing our pain. So thank you. I want to introduce our senator, my senator.
Yes.
She's not new to this, she's true to this. When I was thinking about her early on and they had the campaign slogan, the clear choice, I said, whoa, I love it. And so I'm gonna pass the mic to our Senator Cordell Clear.
Good evening, everyone. And first of all, let me just thank our council member, Yusef Salam, Chair of the Committee on Public Safety, for hosting this event here this evening. I also want to recognize the organizer, Dr. Tawana Guilford, panelists who may be on their way, Public Advocate Jamani Williams, and Assemblymember Al Taylor. Also, I want to thank Ruth McDaniel, founder of Breaking the Chains of Your Mind. And Kiana Beckles, CEO of Leverage Assessments. Victor Pate, the chairman. As I call him, he's always the chairman. Of the NAN NYC chapter of the Second Chance Committee. Right? I want to just take a moment to pause, and I don't know if she's in the room, but I want to really thank our sister Ariana Punter, who allowed us to get this space this evening. Thank you for all your work and your effort in doing that. And I want to give thanks to my staff and all the staff who participated in this and helped make this event happen tonight. So I really appreciate you. Thank you. The time has long been right to reimagine what policing can be, from everyday interactions on the street to the justice system, sentencing and rehabilitative incarceration. All levels need more of a human touch, need common sense, as well as equity and justice in the full sense of the words. I'm working on literally dozens of reimagining policing and the justice system bills in Albany. And there's a handout available. I'm not going to talk about them. But it is because of conversations like this that we got to those pieces of legislation. From the HALT legislation to making sure it included postpartum delivering women in prison, working with RAP, working with so many organizations to make sure Clean Slate became a reality. All of these things happen because of people like you and conversations like this in this room tonight. And also just us seeing what's going on in our communities. I don't think anybody at this table has an experience what we're all going to be talking about here tonight. Every day, including me. I've called the police on a situation and had them come to get me. After one of my white neighbors started speaking, and they thought that that was the person that needed to be protected. Didn't even check to see what was going on. So we have to change our mindset. We have to change what people think of us. And we have to do it together, white, black, and everybody. We have to make those changes. One of the bills I'm just going to talk about is jury of our peers, and it's very important to me, and I'm really trying to get it passed this year. We don't have enough black people in our jury boxes. Okay, people, I'm telling you this. When you go down to court, the defendants are overwhelmingly us, and the people in the jury box are overwhelmingly not. That is not a jury of our peers. So not only do we have to get in those seats, we also have to pass legislation that makes it possible for people who have been incarcerated formerly to serve on a jury. There is no reason, if you have paid your That's a society, and you paid the price. Who's better than you to sit and be a jury? Because you are actually our peers. Also, I'm also fighting for legislation to require that at least one member of the parole board be someone who's been on parole. People don't understand that system. When you keep coming back to a parole board that doesn't understand your community. So these are things I'm gonna be looking for your help and assistance with in the year coming. And we expect to pass those this year. I'm not gonna be very long. I think I'm just gonna talk about what we're here to do tonight. Law enforcement and policing are contentious issues across the world. Most will agree that there is some type of authority presence needed to keep civilians safe from harm and to maintain order within communities. This can resemble neighborhood policing, a community watchman, tenant patrol, block association, private security, and what we universally have, local police departments. The goal of these entities is to keep people safe. Pushback and outcry occurs when harm has been done by members of law enforcement towards those they oath to protect and serve. When intentional and unintentional harm occurs towards civilians, questions of accountability and transparency arise, often brought to the forefront are the questions about the officer's background regarding past infractions. Very seldom does the public question the process of screening out the bad apples. So the goal of this forum tonight, thank you, Dr. Guilford, is to discuss specific tools to increase public safety, protecting civilians from harm directed towards each other and also harm by officers against civilians. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight. Give yourselves a round of applause. Okay, I'm going to get started because we have a hard stop, folks. Okay. One of the questions that comes to mind, well, actually, I want to know what comes to mind, and whoever wants to take this. When you hear defund the police, this is a public safety question. Take it first.
I'll jump out. So, and I was reading your questions, and three things came to my mind. When you talk about defund, the first thing that comes up in my mind, which is okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. So, three things come up for me. One of the things that come up for me, when you talk about defund, I'm saying, okay, so you're gonna defund. That means cost saving. That also means repurpose, reinvest, and transform. Now, what do I mean? I mean, if you're talking about taking funds away from law enforcement, so those same funds that were being used to militarize our police should be reinvested into our communities for intervention. That's number one. Number two, when we talk about defund, you have to also think about repurposing. What are you going to use those funds for that you're defunding from the police? I say repurpose to our communities that are lacking resources. And thirdly, I say transform. Transform the policing, the way it's been policing, and make the policing in our communities more community focused. That means that we here in this room should be a part of policing our own community. That's what I remember when I was coming up. And I remember, I was a bad guy. But I also remember that the police that were in our neighborhoods knew my name. And if I did something, whether it was the police or the other police in our communities, y'all know what I'm talking about, they was gonna tell. So I think that there's a combination of three things when I think about defunding the police and what needs to go into that mix about defunding. You need to give us that money back. You need to return that money to the communities that's been most harmed by violence, mental health, hunger, homelessness, and a whole myriad of things that we here in the community have been dealing with for years. So for me, defund means reinvest, repurpose, and transform.
Victor, several years ago, back in 2012, in fact. Can you hear me? I'm Ruth McDaniels. I figured everybody would know by now. But in any event, I'm Ruth McDaniels from Breaking the Chains of Your Mind. And it's a reentry platform. And I speak as a parent, as a grandmother and a parent of a returning citizen of an individual who lives in this community. I was raised in this community. But when we say repurpose, it's a multifaceted object. We have to understand that. This system has derived ways to make money off of certain behavior. And they're not going to unleash that just so quickly. I hear our councilmen talk about courtesy, professionalism, and respect. But if you notice now, the new cars just have 1845 to 2024. So they want us to continue to remember what it was established with. And we have to know that when they start referencing back to that, we have to go back to that.
Right.
We can't be lackadaisical on how we actually maneuver with this group. They're wise to us. They've broken the majority of us over and over. This is a community that's broken, it's disenfranchised.
Yeah.
Columbia did a study. It was called the pattern. Interesting. The pattern. The pattern. A pattern is something that you can cut and draw and make it over and over again. The pattern was a piece of material that they drafted up about $1 million blocks. $1 million blocks of blocks in disenfranchised community that they create wealth off of. I happened upon it, just by happenstance. And I found out I live on a $3 million block. Isn't that something? $3 million block. What I could do with $3 million in my block to change the narrative. So now when we talk, when Brother Victor says about repurposing, what does the repurposing look like? How does it look like? Because they're not going to just relinquish this power. You need to understand that. We're long past the idle conversations, even to the legislation being in place. We have to make sure that we get this legislation implemented. We can't just sit back and say, oh, there are books, there are laws on the books. There have been laws on the books. There are black code laws that are still on the books. They have completely not taking them off. Now, we don't live in a black code town, but there are towns that are very much in effect. There are conversations that are being had about us. And because we don't show up and we're not here in the room, does not mean that you're not on the menu.
That's right.
You need to know that. You need to really understand what that looks like. And I say, we have to, like we come out here, we have to come together with our legislators and make sure that we support them. And they have to support us. I ain't letting y'all go. I'm not letting y'all go. It's a back and forth. We have to support each other and making sure we get what we need. Because if they're going out there swinging and fighting and they turn around and nobody's there, what's the point? What's the point? Like Dr. Tawana said, we've had this conversation over and over. But now we got to put some skin in the game. A friend of mine put me onto this thing called Juneteenth every day. It's on Facebook. And I said, yeah, every day they going to jail. I can't be down with that. Don't be throwing me on the floor and whatnot. And I'm the person in the room, let me be so transparent. I'm the only person in this room who's ever locked up somebody for 25 years. Physical labor. For 25 years, I locked up individuals in this city without any deadly force necessary, without a firearm. I've dealt with the most disenfranchised group of people in this system, ages 15 to 25 black males. Every day. I worked in the welfare centers with disenfranchised people, with mentally ill people, with mothers, with poverty, with all of these things constructing their ability to think rationally. So now, are we going to create spaces for mental health? We know that we need that. Are we going to change the aesthetics? Because we know the aesthetics affect our mental health and the way we process things. You know, it's like you come into a clean house as opposed to a dirty house. How do we do this? I say schools, education. We have to stop letting them teach our children.
That's right.
Enslavers can't teach your children.
Talk about it.
Poor education perpetuates poverty. Poverty perpetuates prison. We have to change our own narratives. We got to be accountable to ourselves. So I'm going to pass the mic. Aesthetics, education, and showing up. That's what I need to do.
Peace and blessings, family. I just wanted to also say this, because it occurred to me that when the statement defund the police was first birthed, very, very quickly, if you notice, the fourth estate, the media took that word and began to explain to the community what that meant. Therefore, they took the power away from the people who gave life to that word and put fear in the minds of the people who were listening to what it meant. And I'm saying this because, you know, as a person that's newest to government, you know, I leaned over to our senator. I said, is every part of government being paid? Like, is the tax dollars going to every part of government? She said, yes. And I know y'all know the statement, taxation without representation is tyranny. So part of the language, I know the definition connotatively and denotatively as it relates to defund the police is acknowledging that we're paying for this. That when they ran over me and my mama, who just came in the room, right? And the other members of the exonerated 5 and their families, when they paid us crumbs off the table, we sued for $50 million each. That was $250 million only amongst the 5 of us. Our families sued as well. They gave us a total of $41 million. 1/3 went to pay legal fees.
Wow.
But what I'm saying is this, that money came from us.
Yes.
The tax dollars paid for the mistake that they continue to make. And so defund the police, when it was taken away, when the microphone was snatched, and they said, we gotta figure this out. Let's start telling people what this means.
Change the narrative.
The narrative changed, and it caused people to think that every time somebody said defund the police, it was a negative. But what we are exhibiting here so brilliantly is that we have to reallocate the money. No longer can we continue to pay for the boot, the hand, the knee that is on our neck, the gun that is shooting us as we are laying in our bed sleeping in the name of a Breonna Taylor. The gun that's going to shoot us if we in the park, a Tamir Rice. If we trying to figure out how to get to our mama house, our grandmama house as a Ramarley Graham. even if our families are calling for help, they're not necessarily calling the cops to kill our children. They're calling for help, which is one of the reasons why the money needs to be reallocated. Because when you're dealing with mental health issues, like Mama Ba, when she called and said, "I need help," she didn't say, I need y'all to help my son out of his life.
Right.
Or in the words of the young people, to unlive him. So I just wanted to put that out there as well, because defund the police, I want everybody who is in the room and who is not in the room to understand that we know what's really going on. Absolutely.
Thank you all so much. For those very detailed answers, and I hope we got a lot from that. There's something that I failed to mention. We're going to ask everyone. Yes, please, if you can keep your responses to 3 minutes, because I know everybody has a lot of important and good things to say. I think that defund the police. The answers were wonderful, Victor. Absolutely, we have to repurpose that money. So when you're saying take money from somewhere, we have to be very clear about where that money is going, because someone will say, "Oh, look, I found some money. What are we gonna do with it?" Right? So we have to make sure that we're a part of that. And Ruth McDaniels mentioned what does the repurposing look like, and the reentry, and the fact that there's such a hold that people have on us. I think about Yusuf's case specifically, when we found out that there was actual evidence proving that these young men were innocent. Even then, the system did not want to let them go. It wasn't instant. It wasn't right away. And I'm one of those marchers who marched, and we had a mayor who refused to pay. He refused. And it took action. It took everybody's action. It took me, as someone who was politically active, asking every single candidate for controller and mayor at every forum that I ever attended, will you pay? They were then known as the Central Park Five. Will you pay the Central Park Five? If you want the support of this community, will you do it? And they answered. And the people who answered yes happened to be the people who won. And we had to continue that pressure. And ultimately they did. But families suffered. Families did not get compensated. There is no compensation for that, first of all. But these are the systems that are in place, and it takes so many pieces and so many people to pull them apart. And it takes all of you. There's no legislator who can do it alone. There's no district attorney. There's no one who can do it. We need the people to be on board, and that's how that happened. That's how every part of change happens. It happens with the people, with you. You have the power. So I'm going to run on to the next question, which is, what are the biggest impediments to improving community police relations?
Hello, good evening. I'll speak on that one. I went ahead and skipped the first one because there were too many tough acts to follow for the first question. And I'll introduce myself. My name is Kiana Beckles, and my company is Selfish Assessments. And we all share a lot of pain in this community, right? And those are some of the things that inspired Dr. Guilford and I to organize and coordinate this event. But I live on a day-to-day on the implementation side. So there are a number of different steps in the process, right, when it comes to actually changing policing. So we're on the front end of it, which is the advocacy side. And that's often where we see, all of you and all of the community. But then once that legislation gets passed, there's the implementation side, and all of that policy gets handed over. In a lot of cases, not only to government officials, but also to vendors, private companies that are doing the actual work of implementing the hopes and dreams that we've all put into the legislation. And so it's really important, not only for the scientists and the vendors who are behind the scenes actually making the police engine run, to be a part of this process, but also those of us who are members of the community, because the majority of those folks do not necessarily look like us. So when I think about some of the largest impediments to improving community police relations, I think that not only is it historical, right? Some of the things that make us fearful of police are trained into us as children. That's a large part of, that's a very large hurdle. But also I think about, I do think about that implementation side, and I think about all of the scientists and engineers and vendors and technologists that make the policing arm run, that don't exactly translate the hopes and the wishes of the types of legislation that we put in place into the actual work that you see on the street. And so me and a couple of other, about 20 other industrial organizational psychologists came together to draft recommendations, particularly for pre-employment selection, as well as recruitment, training, and management for police. One of those co-authors is outside. It's so packed in here that she can't get in. And she actually came up for this event to join us. But those are some of the things that are important. We need to be doing the work on the implementation side, not just on the advocacy side. So it's important that after you see, after you see events like this, and we've gotten the legislation passed, that is not the end of the road there. Like that is not the end. that is the first part. And then we have to also continue to be working for implementation as well as for feedback when we see, so that we're working through all parts of the process.
Excellent, my sister. I'm gonna need us to come in a little closer. First of all, for me, I need us to be present right now. The first thing you need to do to start implementing change, because change is taken, it's not given. You gotta start showing up to these precinct council meetings. You gotta start putting your people in position. We can't cry about what they're doing if you don't even know who the cop is. If you can't even get in the precinct. I need y'all to show up and make sure that when we have precinct council meetings, you're putting in people who want to do what we need to do. I don't need businesses who benefit from relationships with people. I mean us tangibly showing up at a precinct council and speaking to the narrative. I mean, we know how they don't live according to what we need. I need city council to start changing legislation so that we make them live amongst us. No longer you coming in from Long Island, looking at us like, oh, look at these people. What is this? You don't know us because you don't live with us. Right. I need you to come here and be a part of this. Right. Don't sit in the background and speak to me as though you don't understand. You don't understand because you don't know my plight. Talk about it. I need officers to be right from New York City. Right. We have more security in the train stations. If they take their plaques away, if they make them take the trains and the buses, we wouldn't have to worry about is there a cop in the train. We'd be taking all of our parking away. So that's what I tell you. What does it look like? How do we implement it? We implement our own action. Our action demands a reaction. I'm gonna pass it.
Okay.
I want to vote for her.
So for me, the biggest impediment to improving community police relations is that the officers come in with a mindset of criminality. They don't necessarily come into our communities to work with us and to work amongst us. And also, there is no requirement that they do so, right? When we look at their performance measures, how many numbers of arrests did you make? How many, the quota system, thank you, my sister. How many incidents did you respond to, right? So we need to demand that they change those performance metrics. How many families did you meet, right? How many mothers did you exchange numbers with? How many babies did you kiss? How many community events did you show up to? Because last year, right, and my brother Conrad and I, we had a conversation. Last year, we were up in arms when they told us we could no longer barbecue in our community. Right? We were up in arms. We spoke on the news, it was an attack on culture, right? We felt the police were completely out of touch with the needs of the community. We said they are trying to eradicate Black people out of Harlem completely. I responded to that because I'm a person who believes that we need more opportunities to become one, right? Because again, when we look at the news, we see all the negative images. But when we put a grill outside, and when we put some hot dogs and hamburgers on and get the music going, there is nothing but love in the room. We need to use, not we, right? Because we already know what we're doing. We need officers to show up at those events to engage and to learn and to appreciate, as opposed to criminalize all of our behaviors. We are under such scrutiny in this community. I just had a conversation with the senator the other day because my brother, and this is not, again, not to make it about me, but it just so happens that I'm a person who is impacted by the justice system every day I wake up. He was double parked going into the restaurant to pick up his food, and the officer pulled out his book. My brother got back to the officer before the cop started to write the ticket. He said, I'm here. You don't have to continue to write the ticket. The officer said, back up, sir. So the next day we went to the precinct to just see what could be done about the ticket. And the sergeant he just informed us. He said, listen, this ticket was written by Lorraine's. Lorraine's had 2 recent shootings. So I'm letting you know that.
Lord, he was by Lorraine's.
But he was in a restaurant.
That's the ticket.
I'm letting you know that for the remainder of the summer, the area between 131st Street and 135th Street is going to be under surveillance. Yeah, you heard it here. I was not shocked, but I felt bad for us. I felt bad for us because in response to those shootings, we've all been generalized, right? Like every person going in that vicinity will be looked at through the lens of criminality. Whether they're going to patronize those businesses or not, they're going to be positioned as a possible patron of Lorraine and a possible shooter associated with this establishment in response to 2 shootings. Mind you, we all come and go every single day. So it's like every place in our community or every place between 131st and 135th Street can possibly have us in a predicament that we never intended to happen. So when we talk about what are those impediments, we have officers operating in our community deciding for us where and how we should move in our communities. And I feel bad each and every time I tell my brother that, listen, you can't always be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, this narrative is getting played out. But in his defense, this is his community. This is all he knows. Those 4 blocks is where he's grown up. So we have to hold police officers accountable, and I'm going to wrap up. We have to get them to understand that they cannot continue to box us in. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. So thank you for those insightful answers, from the history, as Ms. Beckles pointed out, where we're still being targeted based on history. Showing up, that's very important. Showing up. Precinct council meetings is one of those ways to show up, but there are all kinds of hearings at city council, hearings in Albany, hearings all over the place that we need voices to show up for. And performance metrics. We do have to, what is the focus? What is the goal here? What are we trying to do? And when we do have barbecues and cultural gatherings and our culture is being attacked, what is the voice? I say it's more than the police. I say the police are motivated by other voices. And I say there's money behind what people what you see happening right now. I grew up in a heroin-infested, crack-infested community. We didn't like that. Most of us did not like that. We complained about it. We organized. Nothing happened. But the minute real estate changed, it was instant, almost overnight. Do you remember all the blue caps, red caps, yellow caps on the sidewalk? Do you remember all the drug paraphernalia in our stores? Do you remember the needles? Do you remember the lines that led to an abandoned building? And police telling you, oh, well, how do you know they're selling drugs there? And what is their name? What do they look like? Right? When we wanted to help. So I think that we have things that are generated by other things in addition to police. And I have seen complaints that come into one police plaza from certain people about our people. I remember in the early days when people were complaining, oh, the kids are on the bottom and they're making noise. Well, you know, there was a time we didn't go to these parks. We couldn't go to the parks. And what did you do? You played in front of the building. Okay, I would much rather hear the kids playing hopscotch or steal the bacon or any other thing rather than the gunshots that we hear now. So now that we are fixing up those things, we have to recondition ourselves and we have to claim those things. The parks are ours. The libraries are ours. Use them. The museums are ours. Use them. All these things are ours, and we have to advocate for more things that we like, because it's the people whose voices are being heard that's directing a lot of what you see. All right. We have a question here. Let's fast forward to the year 2030. 2030. If you can reimagine policing, how would it look for you?
I'm gonna jump out, and I'm gonna be quick. I say what I gotta say. I keep it moving. That's no shade on my other fellow pals. By no means taking this that, but I'm just saying that's who I am. So thinking that far, or it's a real long way to look, but I can tell you for myself what it looks like. What it would look like for me is that we, the people, and you heard Yusuf Salon say that. And it's always about we the people. But only time it stops being about we the people when we allow that to happen. Okay? We have to look at what is the cause and what is the fix. So we know what the cause is, we also know what the fix is. So in order for us to get where we want it to be, that means that we, the people in this room, the community, have to make that picture the way we want that picture to look. And what it would look like for me is that the police that are policing our communities now need to be, and my comrade said it, a part of this community. They need to be engaged and involved in every level of our community. They need to be at our community meetings where we are the ones that set the platform for what we want. Where we say what we want you to do because we pay your salary. Our taxes pay you to serve and protect and courtesy to us. Well, then we're going to demand that it looks like that. But we got to make sure that we are at these tables, and if there is no table, we build a table. And we bring our own chairs. Because that's what I'm used to doing. I bring my own. So for me, it's about us transforming our communities into what we want our communities to look like. And for people who come into our community, you better act like you know, unless you won't be here. Simple as that. You work for me. If you ain't doing the job that I'm paying you to do, guess what? You ain't got no job, at least not here. If I don't do the job that I do, I won't have a job. So just like there's a systems of accountability for us, although it's not equal, we all know what time of day that is, but that's another conversation. However, if there's going to be accountability, the accountability should be equitable. And we should hold them to a higher standard because you serve the people. You're supposed to protect the people. You're supposed to be courteous to the community. serve, protect, and give us real courtesy and real protection. But you have to be a part of this community, and you have to be included in this community. And you should know our names.
Wow, 30, what was 2030?
Yeah, that's around the corner.
2030, God willing. 2030, God willing, I will be. I'll be 56. I'll be 56. And sometimes when I'm talking to folks that remember this story, they say, wait, hold on, what? How old are you? That's because they remember me, that young 15-year-old. Like, what you see right now is two Yusefs. One Yusef that was a 15-year-old flat top wearing young man, and now the future Yusef, who is now the city councilman for the same district that he was kidnapped from. I submit that a lot of what we have to do is we gotta begin to live full so that we could die empty.
Yep.
We are literally living and fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. Because every time somebody makes us afraid, we run and hide. When fear is false evidence appearing real.
That's right.
So we got to do the hard work and look in the mirror. And just like my mom said to me, she said, we need to begin to love ourselves again. We need to begin to respect ourselves again. And why is that? Because when it comes to the elders, the real OGs, they're saying to us, man, don't be stupid. You shooting a person because they stepped on your sneakers?
Right.
That's what folks did back in the day. It's coming right back around. And the wise ones are the ones that we're supposed to get counsel from. The young ones are supposed to be the ones that implement the work. And we got to do so much work, I think, in a very, very short time. Because that's just right around the corner. And it's not like it can't happen. We can recreate what I'm going to call the second Harlem Renaissance by resuscitating the very soul of our people. Because when I see that person on 125th Street yelling and crying out for help, but they look like they on drugs, because they are on drugs. They look like they be crack. Somebody said crack is coming back. But you got to realize that a lot of these folks, if not all of them, every single time they open their eyes, they're saying to themselves, perhaps this can't be life. So they got to try to take a sip, take a sniff, take a puff, take something to try to just get through the day. We got to let them know that they're still valuable. We got to let them know that we see them. We got to let them know that there's still life inside of you that needs to be resuscitated. And so 2030, man, I can't wait for 2030. I want to be able to see it. I want to be able to feel it. I want to be able to say that what we have done, we participated in what I call righteous collaboration. He said, I'm ready. Stay ready. He said, ready.
Peace and blessings, everybody. Love and light to everyone. My name is Jamani Williams. I'm your public advocate in New York. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. First of all, he was holding the mic like a rapper. I don't know if you saw it. He got like that. He was like a hole like that, man. Thank you, Councilmember, Senator, all of my panelists, everybody who put us together. Peace out, Harlem. How y'all doing?
Right.
So this is a really important panel, really important conversation. So I'll just give a, I guess we're going on the last question, but when it comes to public safety in general, Black community, brown immigrant community, but we're in Harlem, so I'm gonna push what I feel like the Black community in particular, like they get sandwiched between very real street violence and very real over policing to address the street violence, even though it doesn't. So that's a real thing. I always want to acknowledge that.
Thank you for that.
Because, no, it's important. I got in. Public safety has been a big thing for me. I remember growing up, and I remember communities that looked like mine had a lot of police in it. And the reason we were told was to address the violence. And so I feel that, like, if that would have addressed the violence, they should have addressed it already. And so I try to be clear that I understand that law enforcement has a role to play, and we should support it with transparency and accountability. But the problem is when we ask them to do all of the roles and to respond to everything, and then we run into problems because they really can't do that. And so I try to think of what law enforcement could be in 2030. It should really just be addressing and responding to acute issues at the moment. Their best use is to respond to acute issues. And they can be used as problem solving. So people have heard of broken windows. You can fix the window without law enforcement. So maybe they can identify the window and call in the carpenter. So if you talk about problem solving and using it that way, I think it would be good. The issue is we've been trying to solve a very complex problem with an acute solution for a very long time. So if you are sick and you went to the hospital, but you only stayed in triage, you're not gonna get better. You want to get in the back with all those doctors who have different disciplines and have different training so they can all work on you, but they have been sending only law enforcement to these communities. And those communities have been crying out for a lot of different things. So they often say, these communities are asking for law enforcement, and asking for police. One, that's true, because we have been pushed to associate police simply with public safety. But two, they've also asked for a lot of different things that y'all don't seem to hear. And so they've asked for additional housing they can afford. They've asked for access to health care and mental health service. They've asked for nurses and social workers in schools. They've asked for jobs to help pay things. But y'all don't hear that. The only thing you hear is the policeman. So what happens to all of the other things that our communities have asked for, all of the things that help with public safety? And so what I often do is say, I tell folks, think of a community that you deem safe. No one has ever mentioned the communities that have the most police in it now and send the most people to jail now. Which means that alone is not what you deem safe. Most of the time, people deem communities that have access to affordable housing, they have access to more than potato chips to feed their children, they have access to health care. And that doesn't mean you get to excuse behavior that's harming people. There has to be accountability, but I think it's immoral to always just talk about accountability without talking about how we change the behavior of the community. And someone said, if punishment alone wouldn't make us safe, then this country should be the safest country in the world. So we have 4% of the world's population and 25% of all the jail population. But we're not necessarily the safest people in the world. And so there are two things I think that go on with policing. One, you do have bad apples. You have bad apples everywhere. And we should hold them accountable. Very often we don't. The second part is we have to reimagine policing as a whole. So I used to think it was just about retraining, and I used to think it's maybe, but it's not. And no matter how many, and I'm very proud of the bills that we passed, and I've learned this, no matter how many bills we pass, we're playing whack-a-mole. As soon as we hit it, come back. So what we have to do is change the function of how police operate in our communities, what we use them for, when we call them. So I see a question here about defund the police. As much as I'm associated with defund the police, I've never used the term. I didn't like the term then. I didn't like it now. I thought it was a bad term. But I will tell you this, I kept telling people, why y'all arguing in the street with people who are angry? Instead of talking to them to see how we can address the concerns that they have. Because I know this, most people believe in defund the police unless you call it defund the police. And so the things that they were pushing, if you ask someone, should law enforcement be the first response to folks who have mental health crisis, almost everybody would say no. So then we said, they have funding that is used for people who are addressing mental health. What if we take that funding and give it to the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene so they can hire people to address it? Most people would agree, but guess what you just did? And so really, I think so many people in different spaces understand how to really reorient public safety, reorient policing. For one, fear is a very strong thing, and people use that to push bad policy, whether it works or not. And elected officials only want to get elected, so they push that fear, whether it's true or not. And so what we have to do is have the courage to really push past that and understand our law enforcement function and their best function. By the way, many of our police want to be responding to mental health. They don't have the tools to do that. But we have to really push a different structure of our police. And I'll end with this. We have now more Black leadership than we've ever had in the city today. But I keep telling folks, I don't want to confuse Black persons doing better with Black people doing better. Because, just because we have these awesome titles that I want to actually keep, I don't want to get confused, I don't want to lose it. But the same time that we were rising and elevating, we lost 200,000 Black folks that had to leave. More than that now. 2 years ago, we had more Black people down the street homeless than ever have. So if you ask me if should we diversify leadership, the answer is yes. It's better than not having diversity. But I don't want to point of diversifying it if we're not going to have people change the structure that we're there to begin
I knew I should have spoken before you. You had all my So I'll be quick because he's actually said two of the points that I was going to make. I'm a licensed psychologist for the folks of you who do not know. And the public advocate mentioned mental health response, right? How do we discuss that and what do we do? So for me, reimagining policing would be to revitalize or revive the Be Heard initiative, right? Because that is a thing. That is an initiative that we put money into to have mental health responders as opposed to law enforcement. When we try to use Be Heard in present day, we will have a plethora of officers still respond to mental health crises. We have to think about this community as a whole. We have been impacted by mass incarceration for generations. We are carrying trauma since slavery. Post-traumatic slave disorder is a real thing in our community. So there are very few of us in the room that does not have some form of mental health issue. We all lie on the spectrum of mental health condition. So with that said, at any moment, we can go from calm to acute crisis in seconds. We need responses that are humane, compassionate. We need people to come and check on us in a humane way. We don't need officers to show up when we are in crisis with their guns drawn, or to escalate and exacerbate a situation when we are already in pain. So we want to reallocate those monies to mental health professionals because we want to respond. We want to do the work. We want to help to de-escalate situations. We also need the powers and the tools in order to be effective. And the second part, and I'll be quick, for me, reimagining policing is holding law enforcement accountable for the legacy of injustices that they have committed against individuals wrongfully, right? We need to really kind of drill down on that because historically we have experienced abuses, and when it does come to light that people have experienced misconduct, we need law enforcement to undo some of those harms. So thank you.
I agree with all of what has been said. And I think that we all want to imagine a safe community, right? I live in this community. My family is from Harlem as well. And so we've all seen Harlem be over policed, and we've all seen a lot of resources go to MIP that I think could have been coming to some of the community centers that are closed. But I'm also thinking about what some of the things are that we can do to actually implement some of this vision. Of course, I think about human resource processes. So I'm thinking about promotional exams. I'm thinking about testing, right? I'm thinking about just as Dr. Yother is a clinician, clinicians are involved in the pre-employment selection process, right? We can use that to not only screen for healthier police officers, update. And we can also put some of these recommendations in that legislation, right? We can make some of those recommendations more tight. But we can be selecting for officers that are healthy. We can be making sure that we are updating, particularly our pre-employment psychologicals, to be predicting more culturally sensitive behaviors, and maybe also predicting for racist behaviors. And then we can also be changing performance metrics for police. For a long time. Again, going back to the history of policing, right? Performance measures were always focused on punitive measures, right? We were always focused on the number of arrests police officers are making. This is just driving the problem. And so how can we create performance metrics that are more aligned with the community policing behaviors that we want to see and less reliant on arrests? In the past, we've had quota systems. Of course, here in NYC, we don't have a quota system anymore. But the culture of that still persists, where there's an assumption that the more arrests you make, the better your performance is as an officer. So those are some of the things that we can do. We talk about living in the community, police officers living in the community. That is a very heavy and complicated dialogue that gets a little exhausting. There are lots of different sides to it. On the one hand, communities always want to see police officers that are from their community and represent them and look like them. But then for officers, from an officer safety standpoint, a lot of police departments prefer their officers to live outside of the community. So, and then there's also cost of living, particularly in our municipalities. In a lot of cases, our police officers get paid a little bit less. And so it's cheaper for them a lot of times to live outside of the urban area because they can have grass and they can have, other things that people like to have when they're raising kids or what have you. So there's that complexity as well as in terms of budget. I know, I want grass too. So, but I'm just reflecting that these are some of the conversations that are had. These are some of the conversations that come up when we talk about things such as officers living in the community and that sort of thing. And this is some of the pushback. And so there does have to be a coming together. I think we can't be. All right, it's okay. You got people.
Right, let them hear. Water.
Is there a medical professional in this house? Is there a medical professional in this house?
Yeah, me too, bro. Me too.
Medical professional here.
We need to take this meeting to a park next time.
Look at my pen.
It needs to be, so the young people can get in.
Yo, Mark.
Is everybody okay? I know that our hosts here at Kennedy Center host events all the time. And I'm sure that they have all kinds of protocols in place to support the guests that come and join us. So thank you so much for being so helpful.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well,
You made me have to come for you. I'm an officer who lived in the community. When everybody checked out, I worked in the 2A. Listen, I lived here because I had to be near my kids who went to school here. I worked in the 2A. My kid can't be all the way up in Nanuet. And I'm here down on 125th Street. And they need me. Because he's still black. They still black up there. And I have nobody up there. So now, I stand 10 toes down. You gotta be with us to understand us. You can't be from somewhere else. I don't even need you being from the east side. How about that? Because their conversation is different.
Roy, we have a minute at a time for questions.
Go ahead. She just like,
We continue. I want to thank all our guests.
One mic.
I want to thank everyone. Look at the person next to you, the person behind you, the people sitting up here, the organizers. Thank you all for coming out here tonight. This was a rich and powerful discussion. We may get to a few questions coming up. I just want to mention that as I was listening to our public advocates speak, all of you have said, we can heal ourselves. I dare you to believe it, but we can. And I look around the room, I look at people like when Jelani talks about the other things. Policing is not about the police showing up. It's so much not about police. If y'all can, just 1 minute, everybody. It's about people like Dolores Roberts, who are in our schools for years, for decades, volunteering, teaching, after school, not just teaching in the daytime, but following students, getting them to college. It's about that. It's about people like Aisha Sekou, Malcolm Shabazz Masjid. In this, how many people remember how 116th Street used to be? And the people who held it down and are still there today. Sharon Salam, who's been mentioned earlier. It's about all of the work that we all do daily. Renee, I'm sorry, I forget your married name. But the work you've done in public housing, it's about all of that. Because you get somebody, their mental health together, where they're gonna live. How long does that last? How long does that stability last before that person falls off again? It's all connected. The psychological abuse, the underserved schools, the stuff that our children suffer at young ages. All of that has to be addressed at the same time. Racism is a factor. Discrimination is a factor. All of this relates to policing because my community and my people being safe, unfortunately, is different. It's different than other people being safe. So we have to participate in that healing that's going to happen to us. You're all doing it right now. All the people on this panel are doing it. And you can't do it for one day. You got to do it every day. I see Ryan Healthcare. Our physical health is a part of the problem. I've watched as people like Aisha have gone out and said, a sandwich can make a difference. It can de-escalate a whole situation. Okay? It happens to me. I need a sandwich right now. So imagine young people who are outside, who don't have anything to eat, who don't have food and don't have shelter. Let somebody step on their foot on top of that. Look at our baby Jordan who was in the subway and he was trying to get some money to eat. It could have made the difference, a meal. So all these things are part of policing. Paul, Anthony Dolce, I think I saw the reverend from our tag here, all the people that do this work every day. We all have to do this work every day. There's no time off. There's no days off. And we have to keep pouring in. So I'm going to get to some of these questions. Some I'm just going to, here we have, and I'm sorry, handwriting is that. How could I be falsely targeted and placed in Harlem Hospital psych ward because police didn't believe I owned in Harlem? Isn't that something? So, unfortunately, it's more of a statement, but I wanted to just put that person's expression out there because it happens. People don't believe. We're a great community. I grew up with great people in this community. People who held down block associations and tenant associations and parent associations and usher boards and auxiliary and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. We did things. Nobody was sitting here twiddling our thumbs waiting for someone to come and tell us what to do. So we've done things, and it's unfortunate that people don't recognize it. How do you feel about ending qualified immunity? I'm on the bill. Let's just go down. Let's go down the road. Okay, we have a bill in Albany. Qualified immunity is basically taking the word of someone just because of who they are. And that's not just policing out here, that's corrections officers, that's all kinds of situations. So I believe that you should not just be able to do that because of who you are. Absolutely.
I second that.
Thank you.
That's the okay, that's the answer.
Qualified immunity should not be no accountability. Qualified immunity should not amount to no accountability.
That's right. Thank you. And shout out to Rap for coming up to Albany and keeping that message out there for our colleagues, because I got it. And Vocal, I'm sorry, Vocal. Mother of Harlem Chocolate Factory, how do you get help from the police when they know nothing about our community? I think we talked about that. They come with preconceived notions. They come with their ideas about us. They don't know where to get help. They don't know who you are. They don't know how you are. You may have just lost your mom. You may have just lost your job. They don't know what's going on in the community. You may have witnessed something really traumatic. They don't know what you're experiencing and what you're feeling. So this speaks to Ruth and others who have brought up.
Senator Clear, may I give fam a quick heads up about a community intervention we're doing between Black and brown youth and police to re-socialize the police?
Okay, but can you give me 2 minutes so I can finish some of these questions?
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Police shootings. Police are targeted to shoot targets or trained to shoot targets. I'm sorry. Why police shoot to kill when a person with a knife after tasing rather than shooting them in the arm or legs? That can kill you too, by the way.
Right.
They shoot they're trained to shoot the biggest mass.
That's right. Say it again.
But it's bad, but it's hard to shoot an arm. So they're trained to stop whatever the threat is. Too often they're wrong about the threat. That's what the biggest thing is. Now, I also, the Most High, my ancestors, my family to keep me grounded. But I try to remember everybody's human being. And so I know if something happened now, most folks try to call 911, and we run away from the danger while those human beings run toward the danger. So I always try to make sure I'm rehumanizing what's going on. The problem that I have is we keep sending police officers to places they shouldn't be and don't need to be to do things they don't need to be doing and responding to. So if all we have was them responding to acute things, it wouldn't be as much of a problem. What we need to do is, and I appreciate everything we're saying, how to try to fix the department. We actually just have to change how the department views itself, how it views policing, and what police are supposed to respond to. Because we put some of those officers in situations they have no business being in, and they respond. Some of them actually are afraid themselves.
Yeah, they are. All of them.
And you know, we did pass Daniel's Law, which is a result of Daniel's Law, which is a result of a tragic incident in Rochester, the Rochester Binghamton area, where someone mentally ill wound up being killed by the police. But again, it goes back to the funding and the political will. What will you put the money behind? And we do have a program in New York City that can send out people who are trained in mental health, not officers, who can go out with officers to certain calls. But how heavily is that funded and how much is that implemented? And I think I have some information in the back of where you can call when you need someone other than police, because you do need that sometimes. We don't know how to handle that, but the police, they're not psychologists, they're not psychiatrists, and they see someone with a knife. You may know that's Craig, and you know sometimes he acts like that. But very often, I've had to stay in a situation I saw unfolding in the street. Someone was having an episode because they had just taken something And it was just an episode, though. You're yelling and you're screaming, but you're on this brownstone block, and the calls are going, and the calls are going, and the calls are going. And people are coming out of their house. I called them already, Joe. They're coming. I'm just saying. And I have to stand there because I know what's going to happen to this person. And I'm standing there. Not only is he's in danger of being victimized by the police, but now there's other predators looking at his cell phone and looking at his wallet and be like, "Oh no, I'm his friend." I said, "Well, when he gets better, we'll talk about friendship. Leave his stuff alone."
Okay, right.
And you know, in a matter of about 25 minutes, he came out. But I had to stay there with him while the police came because they pulled up very aggressive. What's going on? You know you're not. Your neighbors are complaining. People, and that is what's really happening. They're getting 100 calls, and it's being described as God knows what. God, and he's just yelling and acting the fool and rolling around. But what they're getting is, oh my God, you know, my wife and kids and my family, and that's what they hear. So they run to the rescue, and sometimes they come aggressive with the wrong attitude. So you need people who understand these situations and these people, and also we need them to be safe as well. So in order to do that, I think, you know, we do need more of that. That's what we have to do. Oh, this is just, I don't like questions just for him. Why does he just get a question? Where do you stand on parole justice?
We stand. I'm gonna stand up for this because I like standing up for my people. You know, I don't know why I heard somebody say, first of all, but I'm gonna tell you this, right? We are in a very punitive society as opposed to a just society. There used to be a time where if a person made a mistake, they went somewhere and paid for it. And now they're being made to continue to pay over and over and over and over again. I think part of the answer to this question is what was suggested about having a person who was on parole, who was actually impacted, be a part of the parole, the people that are adjudicating everything. So I'm for parole justice. I think people should not be giving exorbitant time. They should be able to, if they have made a mistake, pay for that mistake. If they never made a mistake at all, they should never go to prison at all.
Right. All right. This is the last question I think we're gonna have because we do have a hard stop and we want to be invited back here again. We want to come back. And this is a great question. I mean, we know the question, but we should all think about it. Do police ever take tests to see if they are racist?
No.
Thank you. That would be a good idea. And I'm going, yes, ma'am.
All fairness, I think they should. It had to do with bias. I'm sure other people in this room maybe.
Yeah, sometimes they do the diversity and the bias training.
So the bias training, so let's be clear about it. It's not just that they do the training. The training was being done by someone from Florida who was racist.
Yes, he was.
And it came out in the training. She said something about a big, but the man was big and black. That already tells you that person is not ready to do this training. So what I want to say is we have to be careful about what we give a nod to, what we say yes to, and say, yes, there's training. There's not training. So we need to review what police training looks like. The last thing I'm going to say, because I have an event going on right now, but I came just to say this. And I said it to Jumani at the community board. Our children are being arrested and made to become gangs because it's 5 of them. And then police officers are looking to get promotions. And it is happening because they make them gang members. So we need to focus on that. You said When we talk about public safety, it's not what the police have to worry about with us, it's what we have to worry about with them. That's it, peace and blessings. Thank you all for having us.
And as I promised, John Martin, I'd like you to make your announcement very quickly.
I solemn oath on it. Hello, family. I'm Dr. John Martin Green, Artistic Director of Blackberry Productions Documentary Theater. And for the past 3 years, we have been doing a community intervention between Black and brown youth and police designed to re-socialize the police from their militaristic disposition where they regard our children as perps, to regarding them as members, our children be their children, members of the community. And we're looking for young people. It's stipend-bearing workshops called COP, which is an acronym for Communities Organizing for Partnership and Peace. And we're going to be doing them at St. James Presbyterian Church on 141st and St. Nicholas, starting May 2nd, and for 6 weeks. And they're stipend-bearing workshops for young people, Black and brown young people in particular, between the ages of 17 and 24. There are some flyers on the back. Please send your young people to us.
Thank you so much. Hearts are healing, our young people are getting the answers are healing. I'd like to ask the elected officials if they have any closing remarks. If there's anything you want to close with. Otherwise, and I want to recognize the Attorney General's office that's here. Please. They play a big role, folks. We just passed legislation because the real crimes are often not made into a crime. You wouldn't believe that what's happening in Central Harlem, deed theft, people are losing their homes. The Attorney General's office initiated legislation, which we just passed this Saturday in Albany, to make deed theft a crime. And this particularly happens to our seniors. When you talk about generational wealth and someone stealing from someone in our community. So I want to thank you for your work in that regard, and being a great partner with me. I think I saw the DA's office here. Is he still here? They are doing great work. They have partnered with me on bills to end human trafficking. Yes, Assembly Member Alex Morris was here from the Upper East Side. We appreciate it. But we're all kinds of legislation happens with us working with each other, listening to you, and working with each other. We have to work together because I think it's Jemani who said we wind up playing whack-a-mole with this stuff. We pass one thing here, something else pops up over there, and I think was mentioned several times, we don't get enforcement. So we have to get enforcement, and in order to get enforcement, you have to be aware. You have to know that it's a crime. You have to know what your rights are. You have to know what you can do, and you have to execute. You have to act on that. So I want to thank you all for coming.
Cordell, they also have right to remain silent for Aisha. That's legislation that needs to be pushed so that these people will know that their children don't have to be stopped. I mean, we're 35 years out of youth theft, and we still haven't got legislation. So pay attention to that. Right to remain silent. It stops law enforcement for asking our children anything other than their name without representation. We need that. If they do, it's a crime. We need that legislation.
Right.
I'm so grateful to have you. But she's absolutely right. And I have a bill that prohibits law enforcement officers from using bias-based profiling, which is also a bill that I'm joined with by the Attorney General. So we have bills, and you know, bills don't get passed overnight, but they up. False
They up, right?
Come on, she has a bill too.
That's right. Now that you mention it. So we have critical legislation centered around addressing false police reporting. It is called the New York Accountability and Policing Act. And Senator Clear is a co-sponsor on that legislation, along with many other of our elected officials. She's also the prime sponsor on the Conviction Integrity Unit legislation, along with our esteemed Assemblywoman Inez Dickens. And both of those pieces of legislation are near and dear to my heart. I've been working with their offices for a very long time and pushing that legislation because we want to get at the preventative level of a wrongful conviction and also address wrongful incarceration on the back end. So we need to heal individuals and restore them. And I just like to close by just acknowledging you all in the room, because we would not be here in this moment. And I can't overstate that it brings such warmth to my heart that we have this room this packed. So this means to us that this is another conversation that we need to have. Be sure to sign the sign-in sheet and put your contact information, because this is the first of many conversations that we're going to have. And I'd like to thank my panelists, because each of you were selected to amplify this conversation. And without you all, this would not have been possible. This panel here tonight has been a dream of mine since 2013. And tonight it has finally happened. So I want to thank all of my elected officials. I thank the staff, because you all made this happen. Right? I mean, you know, going through the process, planning process is not easy, right? Because we all have our respective things that we do, but we all push through because we're passionate. And if you don't have passion, things will not come to fruition. Passion makes you get through painful moments, and passion is the unifier that brings us all to the table. So I appreciate everyone here, and especially Assemblywoman Inez Dickens, who has been with my family since 2013 when it was first happened. So I'd like to thank you all. Peace and blessings to everyone here. And Ms. Roberts, I want to say 2 words.
Hello. This can happen. You know why? Dr. Gilfie is my former student.
That's right.
Senator Clinton, helped us to say Broadway. When I was head dean, that was my sergeant. You see this room? I'm elated. My phone went off, I was supposed to be in class. I cut it off. Because this is what they need. Would you stick? We love you.
Okay, listen up. This is what's gonna happen. I'm going to pass the mic to, my brother Janine. You said they're gonna give 1 minute, closing remarks. And then we have been asked to exit. Please don't stop to take pictures. We can take pictures outside. That's where we're gonna take pictures, because we have a hard stop and we need to be out of this space. Okay? There's a survey. Oh, where's the survey? On the table. Yes, please fill out these surveys before you leave. And also, I was supposed to mention, please give me a minute. Dr. Check, do we have, is she still here with the petition to have the building name in Harlem Hospital? Anyway, see her upstairs. See her upstairs.
All right, we're about to close out. So peace, everybody. Hello. Peace, everybody. So one, thank you everybody for coming. 2 quick things. One is, we all have a part to play here. I think sometimes people don't want to be involved. They call police so they can handle it. We all have to be involved in handling our public safety. So what I would ask, most folks walk by young people every single day, don't say good morning, don't say good night. We don't speak to them. So the young people that sometimes you don't want to engage with, I'm just asking you to please engage with them. The first and second time, they may not respond the way you want, but nobody has done it. Invisible people act invisible. So just please start to engage. Tell our young people good morning. How you doing? How's your day? So we can get folks back on the grid. Thank you. Please, please.
Yes,
Peace and blessings, family. I'm actually gonna use my time, my minute, just to recite a poem that I wrote while I was in prison. This is called heartbeat. We are at war, the bulk of which will not be physical, the bulk of which is mental. Psychological warfare to make me accept you as better, like your ice is cooler or water wetter. They're holding court in the streets. This time, court will be sweet. We will not accept defeat. The signal will be your heartbeat.
All right, everyone, please let's exit quickly. And again, we want to thank the Kennedy Center and Ariana Punter. We thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.